In a move deemed calamitous from a policy perspective and reckless from a political perspective for Donald Trump, the White House today moving U.S. troops from Syria's northern border. The net effect will be to abandon our best and closest ally in the region, the Kurds, and to allow for a Turkish military operation. The move undoubtedly strengthening the hand of America's adversaries, Iran, Russia, and Syria's Assad. New York Times writes it this way, quote, Turkey considers the Kurdish forces to be a terrorist insurgency and has long sought to end American support for the group. But the Kurdish fighters, which are part of the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, have been the United States' most reliable partner in fighting the Islamic State in a strategic corner of northern Syria. Here's how a former national security official who worked for Democratic and Republican presidents put the president's decision to cut off the Kurds, telling me, quote, "You don't come back from this. America doesn't come back from this." Once the images of slaughtered Kurds and their families are broadcast around the world, especially in the Middle East, America can't come back from that. Our word is meaningless. This official making clear that this is the moment for Republicans who object to this policy to speak out. The crisis threatens Trump's political fate as well. One of his top defenders in the Senate blasted the president's dereliction of duty to our allies today and called out one of the president's lies.
ISIS is not defeated, my friend. The biggest lie being told by the administration that ISIS is defeated. The caliphate's destroyed, but there are thousands of fighters over there, and no, the caliphate would not have been destroyed without the Kurds. This impulsive decision by the president has undone all the gains we've made, thrown the region into further chaos. Iran is licking their chops, and if I'm an ISIS fighter, I've got a second lease on life. So to those who think ISIS has been defeated, you will soon see this, to me, is just unnerving to its core.
And Lindsey Graham wasn't alone. 5 other Republican senators have spoken out, calling the decision, quote, a grave mistake, and saying it poses a significant threat. Senators Mitt Romney and Chris Murphy have even called for the administration to testify before Congress, writing in a statement, quote, barring a reversal of this decision, the administration must come before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and explain to the American people how betraying an ally and ceding influence to terrorists and adversaries is not disastrous for our national security interest. Joining our conversation, former special presidential envoy for the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, Brett McGurk, who served in the Obama, Bush, and Trump administrations. Your thoughts, your reaction. I've seen some of it on Twitter, but take us through it.
Well, look, I was pretty close to this policy under President Obama, and for 2 years under President Trump, I spent a lot of time on the ground in Syria. And we built this campaign really to answer for the concern in the country about these what are called forever wars. I don't really agree with that terminology, but we built this in a way that is very small, it's very light, it relies on few special forces on the ground. Right now in Syria, I think we have about 1,000 U.S. military personnel because we built a force of 60,000 Syrians to do the fighting. So when President Trump, in one fell swoop, after talking to a foreign leader, basically not only says, hey, we're going to leave, but we're going to allow Turkey to come in and fight you, and we can't do anything about it. He clearly did not stand up to President Erdogan, and it basically just undoes all the progress that has been made over the last 4 years. But President Trump also said, look, if ISIS comes back, we can go back and blast. I mean, that was what he said on Twitter today. That is such an irresponsible statement. Who is going to go back? You know, we took Raqqa, which was the headquarters of ISIS, where threats were emanating against us. ISIS was trying to plan a 9/11-like attack out of Raqqa. We took Raqqa with the Syrian Kurds and the Syrian Democratic Forces, who suffered thousands of casualties, and we didn't lose a single American life. So if we ever had to go back and do this again, is President Trump saying it should be Americans in the streets? And who is going to sign up with us to do the fighting? So it's very serious. I think the reaction from Congress, who follows, Senator Graham follows these issues pretty closely. I think what he said is quite apt.
Brett, you resigned shortly after former Defense Secretary Mattis resigned, and this debate and this swerve in policy from Donald Trump for precipitous withdrawal from Syria was one of the factors, as I understood it. Does Mattis have a responsibility to maybe try to redirect the president on this by speaking out either publicly or privately?
Nicole, I can't speak for Secretary Mattis. I mean, I resigned the same week that he did.
Would it be helpful? Would it be helpful?
Well, I think Trump's hearing from everybody here. I mean, there's a cacophony of voices. But look, I resigned the same week that Secretary Mattis did. And what was happening, and I saw this up close, and everybody's seeing it now again, is this total policy incoherence. And it's not just Syria, it is across the board. We have these maximalist foreign policy objectives, whether it's Iran or Syria or Venezuela or China, with a totally incoherent internal process to the job of trying to accomplish what the president says he wants to accomplish. So in Syria, the administration has actually increased the objectives, that we're going to stay in Syria until Iran leaves. We're going to stay in Syria until the civil war is resolved. We're going to stay in Syria until the enduring defeat of ISIS. That's the terminology. But the president then cuts all the resources, and then after a call from a foreign leader, completely reverses course. So it's total incoherence. And the administration's been lucky that there has not been an externally directed crisis, national security crisis. But we could very well face an attack from ISIS, from al-Qaeda. We could face an incident in the Straits of Hormuz with Iran anytime. We could face an incident in the South China Sea with China anytime. And there is not a coherent national security decision-making process in place. And that is very, very troubling. I mean, the president made this decision again with a single phone call to a foreign leader, President Erdogan of Turkey, without any consultation, apparently, with his military advisors, with his Secretary of Defense, his Secretary of State. And so we've seen this before, but it is very, very troubling. And again, we have American personnel on the ground in Syria at this hour, advancing a mission that President Trump has authorized. And in one fell swoop, he completely reverses it and betrays the ally on the ground that allows our personnel to be there, to live safely, and to make sure that ISIS cannot resurge.
I want to just press you on two things you've just said, and then I want to let the rest of the table get in on this. It seems like what you're describing is similar to what a former national security official who spent time in the Oval Office with Republican and Democratic presidents, as you did. Do you believe that America can come back from this? What you just described is basically America betraying its allies, going back on its word. Do you think America can come back from this, or do you think that this creates a vacuum filled by American adversaries like Iran?
It increases the risk, and it limits our options going forward. You know, the value, Nicole, of an American handshake, the value of a handshake from the United States of America, whether from the president or from diplomats who are all over the world trying to advance U.S. national security interests, is depreciating by the week. Nobody can believe anything we say. So if we had to go back and blast ISIS, as President Trump has said, who is going to sign up with us? We have a coalition of almost 80 countries in this global coalition against ISIS that was built under President Obama, carried forward under President Trump. This major decision was taken without any consultation in coalition capitals. We have coalition partners on the ground with us in Syria.
I want to follow up on that, because it seems like what you're saying, I'm trying to read between the lines. You speak carefully, and I'm sure that's why you had such a long and successful career in foreign policy and diplomacy. But are there questions in your mind about this phone call? I mean, obviously, Donald Trump's phone calls with foreign leaders are at the heart of his impeachment inquiry in the House. Do you have questions about who staffed that call, who was on that call, and what was said on that call?
Well, sure, it's weird. I mean, he totally reversed what was a very well-established policy from the national security team without any consultation. So I can't really speak beyond that. I mean, it's strange. And look, I've been on calls,
should the White House
Nicole,
release a transcript from that call with the Turks to understand what exactly was said?
I doubt they'll do it. You know, Nicole,
Why not? Trump did it in a day last week.
But I was on calls with President Erdogan and President Trump, and President Bush in the Oval Office. And President Erdogan will just talk for half an hour. It's just like a fusillade of information. And what presidents do in those conversations is say, got it, I've taken your points, let me consult with my team, I'll get back to you. But here, President Trump, who says he's a tough guy, apparently just completely rolled over and capitulated. And then they put out this statement late Sunday night that was really not reviewed by the national security team and caught everybody totally by surprise. So it is quite, it's strange.
It sounds more than strange. It sounds like he listened. Donald Trump can be a fusillade himself on phone calls. But do you think it's worth understanding and investigating and sharing a transcript of what went on that call, since after he hung up, policy was made that may leave America's closest allies in the region's lives on the line?
Look, I think Congress, the Foreign Affairs Committees, have every right to call advisors up and figure out exactly what happened here. I am careful, having served 3 presidents, about releasing transcripts between heads of state. That is quite an extreme thing. So I doubt we'll see this transcript. But it is good to know, it would be good to know exactly what happened here. How did this happen? Was the president totally unprepared for this call? How did he make these commitments? And then how did the White House put out a policy statement late last night without any deliberation or consultation? I mean, these are matters of war and peace, life or death, the most consequential decisions a president can make, and they're being made on a whim.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.